This next 2 sessions I'm really excited about. They're specific to our youth homelessness demonstration program, which we spoke about earlier. First, it's going to be Carletta and Dash to speak about what is YHDP and all the cool things they're doing. Then afterwards, we have our youth panel, which is going to be awesome at 2 o'clock. So I'm going to pass the torch over here to Carletta and Dash.
Good afternoon. Can you hear us okay? Great.
Test.
Awesome. My name is Carletta Mack. I am the Chief Operating Officer for Covenant House Alaska.
And my name is Dash Tongi. I am the Youth Task Force Coordinator.
And we're really excited to be with you today to talk about the HUD Youth Demonstration Project. We're going to give you an overview of what it is, how we have implemented in Anchorage, the process that we went through to implement, and really, I think the most exciting part about it is the projects that have resulted as a result of this program, and the impact that we have seen 1 year into implementation. So in 2016, HUD announced the new funding, the HUD Demonstration Project funding, and Anchorage was selected as one of 10 communities in the first round. And the whole intention behind this funding was really to integrate new, innovative projects into our community. And I really want to emphasize the word innovative because HUD was really, really encouraging us and giving us an opportunity to think outside the box. They were saying, don't do business as usual. Use this as an opportunity to explore what works, because ultimately what they wanted to be able to do is to take what works and scale it up across the country. So one of the things that is a requirement, and this is exactly what the Balance of State is going through right now, is their community planning process. I have to tell you how amazing it was to announce that we got this funding and how our community came together. We had over 30 different partners within Anchorage come together to help us put together this amazing plan. Dash is going to talk about it, but I think the most exciting part was HUD saying, yes, but you have to have youth at the table, and youth voice must be integral to everything that you do. Our community plan, our vision was that we wanted to make youth homelessness rare, brief, and non-reoccurring. And this vision complemented our city's overall vision to end homelessness in Anchorage. So we wanted to make sure that our plan was very youth-centric, but that it complemented the other activities that were going on within the city. But we also had an emphasis on stable housing, education, employment, well-being, and permanent connections. One of the, I would say, the difficulties being round one is that there's not a lot of information. And so we were kind of the test pilot. So it did take us a year from award to getting our community plan approved. And we literally did not house our first young person until November of 2018. It was an amazing community process, but it was a long community process because we were creating innovative projects that HUD had never done before. So for example, host homes, there's nothing in eSnaps about host homes. And so they had to also get creative to make sure that we could submit the applications and they were gonna get kicked back.
Testing. Okay. So before I go into the importance of youth voice, just a disclaimer, I just took Benadryl, so I might be a little drowsy and not here. I apologize, so don't worry about me.
She's so humble. But she had an allergic reaction.
It's better now, but I just wanted to share a little mission moment before I even get into that as well. This mission moment actually happened just today during my allergic reaction. So Carletta is the second boss, so Chief Operating Officer for Covenant House Alaska, and I felt really bad that she had to walk in this beautiful rain and snow to go get Benadryl, but because she was like really worried about me, and I was just over here like, I hope it's gonna go down. I think it's gonna go down. Like, you know, that was just me, but just that itself, like what happened. What happened today itself is an idea to give you all, like, this is how our community work together, like in Anchorage. I know we can do that all together within Alaska itself. It's an Alaska thing to be helpful to one another. So I love it, and I cannot leave Alaska because of that. So yes, the importance of youth voice. So as you see, it says nothing about us without us, and that is a model that we've been going with throughout the whole process from 2016 until now. So in the beginning, HUD literally said, for every project to be approved, it has to be signed by the members of the Youth Action Board. So technically, it's called a Youth Action Board, but our team and our young people was like, that's so simple and plain. So we called ourselves the Youth Task Force. We sound like Power Rangers, but we love it. So so if you hear YTF or YAB or YAAB, it's all the same, the same concept, same idea, but just different locations and groups. So so next one. All right, so our vision for the Youth Task Force, our vision and our mission was actually created by the young people that are a part of the Youth Task Force. So we envision an Anchorage where envision an Anchorage where stability is hard, compassion is intentional, and commitment is selfless. So throughout the process of creating this vision with our youth task force, it was very emotional, it was very empowering, and it was such a positive vibe to be in just that same room. It was encouraging, it was inspiring, and just very emotional for all of us that were in that room. So those are bullet points. The bullet points are some of the things that we have done or currently doing again. So right now we're currently working on our second Drop the Mic Again talent show, and we have created our Facebook page. We're in the works of creating our live stream to make that as either bi-weekly or a bi-monthly conversation, not only for the young people that is being served or in a homelessness situation, but also for the community to be involved and have ask questions. And we're here to basically break down those stereotypes of young people, kids, youth, young people are lazy, blah, blah, blah. That we all know, we understand there's a lot of other factors that goes into why a young person becomes homeless. And we know that, but we want to share that with the community. So, that's that.
I'm gonna just take a moment and just really just talk about how Youth Voice has transformed our organization. And I'm gonna start by telling on myself. And Jasmine is not here, so I'm gonna tell on her too. So we had to bring our project ideas to the Youth Task Force. And we had to get their sign off. If the Youth Task Force did not approve of the projects that were agreed upon, they didn't even go to HUD. So I remember the day that we were taking the projects to the Youth Task Force. We had our plan, we thought we were ready, we set it in front of them, and they said, "Where's the budget?" And Jasmine and I are looking at each other, we didn't bring the budget. And it was this important reality that you can't invite youth to the table if you're not gonna have them fully engaged and give them the opportunity to truly participate. And so it was a huge eye-opener for me because I'm like, well, do they really wanna see the budget? They did. And they questioned us, and they were hard questions. So on one side, I was really embarrassed, but on the other side, I was like, you go. But I just emphasize, if we're bringing young people to the table, we're bringing them to the table fully. The other aspect was, it also transformed Covenant House. Dash sits on our management team. She comes every single week. She's a part of our decision-making process. If we're looking to do anything different within our organization, whether that's change program or change policy, we bring the Youth Task Force into the space and we get their thoughts and opinions. And oftentimes we've actually switched direction based on those conversations. It really has had a huge and amazing impact on our organization. And I actually love when I get phone calls from the media and they ask for Dash, and I can pass it along. So our project partners for the HUD demonstration project in Anchorage is Covenant House, Volunteers of America, and Choosing Our Roots. We came up with 4 projects through our community planning process, and we're going to talk about those projects, and then I'm going to ask Julia to talk about Choosing Our Roots project. Do you want to do rapid rehousing?
All right, so for rapid rehousing, it is definitely similar. If you were here yesterday and our members from Fairbanks were talking about rapid rehousing for their program, for their My Place program, that's very similar to what we do. So with the only difference with our rapid rehousing, it comes straight from the coordinated entry as well, but the only difference for us is our initiatives for that is youth choice, youth voice, and then we also have a housing first model that we follow. So we don't have a second tool. This is, if you were here, I asked that question if like there was a second process. So they do have a second interview for their process, but we don't have that process because we're going under a housing first model. So whoever gets referred to rapid rehousing, we're gonna work with them throughout the process. We'll go into details in regards to data, but I believe it's definitely an important project and it's definitely working, so.
And so our rapid rehousing project, ooh, can you hear me? Oh, it allowed us to hire 2 rapid rehousing case managers, and the funding allowed us to house 30 youth, but we'll talk about the outcomes in a moment. The next project for Covenant House is the Permanency Navigator team. Talk about something that was innovative. This was actually the youth's idea. One of the things that they said was that they get really frustrated having to navigate or go between case manager to case manager from different organizations, having to tell their story over again. And there are these little steps in between that they sometimes have to do, like get an ID card, in order to qualify for programs. The Permanency Navigators are really exactly that. Their whole purpose is to be mobile, and each permanency navigator, youth are assigned to a permanency navigator, and they are not tied to a schedule at a facility. If a young person needs to go to Social Security and sit for a couple of hours, they will go with that young person to Social Security. Their office is most times their vehicle. The thing about the permanency navigator model was that it did require us to change our philosophy. You know, staff don't drive youth in their vehicles. We had to go through an entire policy and procedure revamp so that our staff could drive youth in their vehicles. So rapid rehousing case managers and permanency navigators are able to do that. The youth have expressed how much they truly have valued the permanency navigator teams. Our goal was to match 100 youth with permanency navigators, and now we're at 244. And they're overloaded. And what it has taught us was the value of this model to the point where the community is talking about scaling it up into the adult system. I can't speak enough about permanency navigators. We were going to have Julia talk about host homes. Yeah, you can.
Hello. So, I'm Julia Terry. I use she, her, hers pronouns. And I'm the paid staff person for Choosing Our Roots. We are a host home model. Those of you who were here earlier heard me talk about it just briefly, and there's so much to it that I'm just going to give you the quick rundown, mostly on our relationship with our community collaborators. So host home model, the premise is community volunteers that have space in their homes, get trained and background checked, and get community support from our organization in order to house LGBTQ plus young people 13 to 24. The host home model works for all different kinds of populations, not simply queer people, but that's what our organization's focus is on. And I just wanna give a big shout out to the Youth Task Force and YTF, because we work really closely with young people that are part of YTF. And of course, we work with all of Covenant House staff and the staff at Volunteers of America as well. But it's really the collaborations with young people that make our programming so powerful. As noted on one of the slides earlier, one of the members of the Youth Task Force is also one of our young adult board members. And that's really helpful because we have ongoing collaboration between our entities. I also think that it's really important, and thank you for sort of calling yourself out there, that we are continually looking at our own adultism and saying, like, how do we engage youth in a more effective fashion? And part of that is not building a program and then inviting youth. It's building the program alongside youth, right? So I've been in a lot of coalitions that say, well, we're going to come up with a thing, and then we'll ask youth what they think about it and see if they want to be part of an advisory committee. And let's turn everything upside down and ask youth to the table right at the very beginning, which is what the Youth Homelessness Demonstration Program allows us to do, to really value the good work that young people are putting into addressing issues around homelessness. Choosing Our Roots participates in the Youth Homelessness Demonstration Project in Anchorage as a collaborative entity, primarily so that we had a voice at the table. So I think that when people are thinking about funding streams, especially when we're talking about this statewide YHDP program and thinking about how that's a pretty small amount of money for the entire state, that it's not about the money, it's about the relationship. It's about the relationship that we're building with young people, and it's about the relationship that we build with one another. So I'm going to talk about permanent supportive housing with Volunteers of America, Alaska, really quickly, and talk briefly about our collaborative case management meetings, and then I will go and sit back down. So Volunteers of America has some permanent supportive housing that they started as part of the YHDP program. And in the short period of time that this has been in operation, they've filled all of their units. I think that it was 14 was the plan. All of us, Covenant House, Choosing Our Roots, Volunteers of America, we have been above and beyond the things that we anticipated happening when we very first started working on this programming. And so permanent supportive housing for young people looks a little bit different than permanent supportive housing for adults. And I think that's an important thing for us to consider as we talk about how this programming can work throughout the state. Permanent supportive housing for youth is maybe not permanent. It's maybe 4 or 5 years for some of our youth to get them really connected to services, stabilized, and then potentially living independently in our community. For some of our young people, permanent supportive housing will be permanent. And as they transition out of the youth age range and transitional aged youth age range, then they'll move into adult permanent supportive housing programs, of which we have a few in the state, and that's really excellent. So we love our partnership with Barry and Sherry, it's funny their names rhyme, over at Volunteers of America. And one of the things that I think we do super effectively is we have bi-monthly case management meetings, and there are all different kinds of people at the table. There are young people at the table who are leading these programs. There are case managers, there are permanency navigators, there are like Jills of all trade like me. And we really look at all of the young people and try to make sure that they have a good safety net of support. So none of these programs operate wholly independently of one another. And I love that because it means people are allowed to fail their experience and move into another experience. And by that, what I mean is, failure's not bad. Failure teaches us something, right? And so we might find somebody who is perfect for rapid rehousing, and they'll go into rapid rehousing, and then through a bunch of situational things, that won't work out for them. And maybe it turns out that a host home program is the best fit for them. So we're just really grateful to be able to be at the table. Those of you who listened to me speak earlier may have heard me saying this. I don't know if I said it as directly as I'm going to say it right now, but queer-centered organizations generally do not have a voice at the table, especially grassroots, loosey-goosey, flying by the seat of our pants queer organizations like us. So the fact that we are able to be at the table with Covenant House and Volunteers of America and incite real change within our community is amazing. And I would say that some of our biggest champions are the Youth Task Force. They really make the difference, and they guide youth towards our programming.
Thank you, Julia. We'll talk about this a little bit later, but the emphasis on collaboration is so important when it comes to, I would definitely say, to this particular project. So our year one outcomes, so for rapid rehousing, we were scheduled to serve 30 youth, and we did place 33 youth into housing. Of those 33 youth, we did have 7 youth discharged from the program, and what that looked like was that one of those youth, it was a formal eviction, and then 6 of those youth was mutual terminations. And we talked about that yesterday, and that's something that our rapid rehousing case managers and team really have built relationships with landlords. So if there is any concern that the youth does need to leave the apartment, that we're able to do it mutually versus having that permanent eviction on their record. And that really has been very positive. And we've actually also been able to maintain the relationships with those landlords. Being able, and it was said yesterday, being able to go to a landlord and say, I'm the person that's here to support this young person. If you have any questions or concerns, contact me, really does go a long way. As we mentioned, our permanency navigators, our goal was to match 100 youth. We matched 244. And one of the things that we also recognize, and this is a requirement of the HUD demonstration project, is to have a strong relationship and partnership with Office of Children's Services, Child Welfare, and Division of Juvenile Justice. And so the HUD funding itself will not pay for young people that are currently in OCS custody, but they do want you to work with your child welfare to prevent young people from going into homelessness. So with the separate funding, we actually hired another permanency navigator that specifically works with youth who are in care. And she's actually here today testifying. And we are looking at potentially expanding the permanency navigator team as a result of the numbers. Host homes, as Julia mentioned, 7 youth have been placed during the year, housed during the year, and then permanent supportive housing, 14. With permanent supportive housing, what we know is 1 youth has been evicted, but all other youth are still housed. I wanted to spend a little bit of time on leverage because I do think this is something that's really important. We recognize that the funding that we got from HUD was $1.5 million over 2 years. That's $750,000 a year. We're very grateful because that funding will stay in our continuum of care beyond the 2-year pilot project. But when we realistically looked at our projects, the cost was greater. And we had an honest conversation about that. Each project developed a full budget, and it allowed us to go to community partners and funders to seek funding to support. Funders were excited about this project. They were excited to support young people and the innovation that was occurring and also the collaboration that was occurring. So for example, I got a call from a funder, was talking about YHCP, and they said, hey, I'd love to talk to Choosing Our Roots and Volunteers of America. And they agreed to fund all 3. And so it's a great opportunity, yes. It's a great opportunity. But there's also other projects within the community that you can leverage. So for example, Path to Independence, Catholic Social Services Partnership with Cook and Lit Housing as well as Widener. Some of our youth qualify for that program. It's similar to rapid rehousing, so we were able to extend our funding because our young people were able to qualify for the P2I projects. All right, we're gonna spend a bit of time on the lessons learned.
All right, so, holy crap. Let me try to gather my thoughts, I'm sorry. Okay, so lessons learned. So community relationships and support was really important from the beginning of our process for YHDP. So our young people, I'm gonna tell you a little story. Our young people, or our YTF members, so we had a pre-meeting before we did the big leadership meeting with all the other organizations, all the other agencies that came together to talk about the action plans, to go through that planning process for YHDP. And during that meeting, it was at Covenant House. There was a lot of adults, and then you have like 4 or 5 young people sitting side by side in in one side of the room. So how the meeting went was very awkward at the beginning, but our youth task force pre-meeting, I told them, well, if you have to be very transparent and you don't feel comfortable, just raise your hand and go for it. Say what you're feeling, say what's on your mind, and just let it out. Like we're not gonna be here to BS anything, basically, is what we told, like what I told our young people. Is like, if we're gonna make any changes, or if we're gonna go through with YHTP project and they need our signatures, because I told them that, I was like, they need our signatures to like approve all these projects. So think about that, like, you know, like just give them a moment, think about that. What do you think, or how do you feel about that? It was an amazing feeling. For one, they felt empowered because they are currently on the table working together to actually fix up those projects that we're looking at and all of that. So one of our members just like stopped the meeting and was like, you know what? I do not like this negative feeling like going on around the room in regards to, yes, your service does this, your agency does this service, that agency might do the same services, but we're here to like help our young people. Like, put all of your differences aside, put all of the financial, all that crap. Yes, nothing is not gonna happen without any financial stuff, but put all of those aside for like at least 10 minutes and come together and just look at a young person. That is who we're fighting for. That's it. That is who we're having these meetings for. So that was one of like the best highlights from those leadership meetings. And I was proud of our YTF team, and I just looked at them. I wanted to cry. I was like, oh my goodness, I had to take a break. But I was so proud of them that they actually stood up, put their foot down, and said, I do not care if your agency does behavioral health, yours does too. If yours, like, you know, we do not care about that. We're just here because a young person is in need, and we all have to change all that mindset to come together, work together, and make sure that young person is housed. So that was amazing. I just wanted to say that. And yeah.
We said this a little bit earlier, but don't be afraid of innovation. I mean, this is a great opportunity to think outside the box, and it's so easy for us to get stuck in the day-to-day and what we're used to doing. And I think about the example that was provided yesterday. One of our permanency navigators, Sean Gaither, so frustrating, trying to get young people housed, and they don't have an ID. They don't have the documents to get ID. And our staff could have simply just said, they could have given up, but the fact that they're using HMIS to generate an ID, and they actually took it a step further and went to the state and asked them to work with us to make this possible for young people, and they said yes. I mean, I'm not sure we would have taken that extra step if it hadn't have been for this project, really encouraging us to identify those barriers and knock them down. I mean, those permanency navigators, they're knocking down those barriers.
So we only, testing. So we only have technically 4 permanency navigators and then 1 specifically for our OCS and systems. So if you think 244 young people, 4 people, there's like at least 60, almost 70 people on each person's caseload. So that is a lot to deal with. So just think of how frustrated those permanency navigators were throughout the process itself, because it wasn't just one young person. There was like multiple people that had that problem of not having their IDs or their any identification on them. So we have youth voice and participation throughout the process is a must. It's not it's needed, it's not it has to happen, it is a must. It is a must to have youth voice and participation throughout the whole process itself. If your agency is currently in that process of creating that youth action board, or that group of young people that are passionate to actually vouch for an agency or vouch for what they believe in, there's gonna be a lot of struggles and a lot of like changes happening, but if you stick through it with all of them, this is the result. I am the result for Covenant House, like sticking through it with me, and I appreciate them very well because, very much because at first I was like really iffy about it. I was like, are you just like, in my head it was tokenism. Like in my head I was like, are you just paying our young people because you need them to do this because it's required, it's a priority, it has to be part of the YHDP process. But throughout that process, we realized, no, they're actually there to actually help us and build us through it. Because now I am currently I am a member of the National Network for Youth Advisory Council. Speaking of that, I will be presenting So I will be presenting about permanency navigators and introducing what permanency navigators do to our, like nationally, to all the other communities down in lower 48. So that's something that Alaska has to be excited about. At least that's what I think, because we started it. So anybody could say it, but we're like, okay, you can check YHDP, we did it first. So we can be proud of that, right? Right? Okay. But yes, so it is a must to have youth voice at the table, because you can't, nobody can just think, oh, let's try this project, let's try this innovative thing or whatever, and you haven't gone through that struggle itself. So having somebody with experience means a lot, so.
So we would be remiss if we did not acknowledge that it doesn't always go as planned or as you want it to go. And you really have to give yourself that space. And sometimes that space requires you to have honest conversations with each other as a team, but also partners. There's gonna be differences of opinion. There's gonna be, I wish we had done it this way. But I do believe that the foundation of what we're trying to do, everyone's on the same page. The young people that we talked about earlier that are no longer in the Rapid Rehousing Project, 6 of those young people went back into homelessness, and they're back at our shelter. That's a hard reality for our staff to face, because our staff believe in relentless engagement and working with them not to realize that we still have an opportunity. That's the great thing about the Permanency Navigator model. We know where every single one of those young people are, and we have the opportunity to keep them connected, to keep them engaged, and to get them back into housing. Dash has a really good example of kind of what happened with one of those young people.
Yes, so if you weren't here yesterday, I shared with everybody, so a young lady was currently in rapid rehousing, and she fell out of the program or project because of some landlord issues. And we asked her, like, we transparently asked her the question, like, what was it that we could have done to make your experience like better throughout rapid rehousing? And her response was, you guys did everything you could. Everybody was like always on it, on top of checking in with me. She said, I really liked that. I appreciated that. She blamed herself for what happened, because she was so excited to have her own place that she regretted telling all her friends her address. And that was the problem. There was so much traffic of a lot of her friends knew where she was at, that people were just coming uninvited, and that was the reason being of why she had a mutual termination where she was. But we still have that relationship with the landlord, so it was a good learning curve for that young person, but also for all the other young people that actually went back to shelter. When we talk to them, they're like, I really wish I wasn't here. I wish I was still at my place. So all of those, even though it sounds really bad that they went back into the shelter or back into their the homeless situation, at least they're learning from that process. So when in due time they get their stuff together and they actually get another apartment, now they know not to F up like they did before. So so I think it's a really good learning curve. Okay, so always follow up and refer back to original action plan. So this was something that we honestly did not do until recently. We were like, holy crap, we did so many things, and we actually kicked out all these other all these initiatives, all these action plan stuff that we needed to do, that we could have used that more as a motivation for us to be like, okay, we have a few more steps, a few more things to go through this list. What can we do now to make it happen? So I believe referring back to the original action plan as a whole in YHDP was, definitely needed. And it was going to be a push for us to keep going and not give up. So.
Yeah, your community plan really is a good foundation and provides really good structure and direction. And we were so focused on getting the projects started that we kind of put it to the side, and really have had it's been a nice little wake-up call, because we looked at it and go, oh, we're actually doing these things, but to be more intentional about making it a part of your meeting. So we have a monthly youth homelessness committee meeting through the coalition. And so we're just really starting to get those back up. And our next meeting will actually be sitting down and going through our community plan, because there are things that have just changed so much since we put it together that we want to revisit it to make sure that the outcomes that we have are still relevant. And if they're not, what would make it more relevant today?
That's, I guess, I'm wondering how much flexibility you have after you come up with a community plan and then you go forward.
So we're going to be meeting with Thea. Our intention is to stay as true to the community plan as possible. But for example, we've implemented Built for Zero, which is an initiative with a national community solutions to get us to functional zero across all subpopulations. Well, Built for Zero is having an impact on our community plan, and we want to stay relevant to the whole community's plan and the goals. We have Anchored Home. We didn't have all of those action plans prior to us establishing our community plan, so we just want to make sure we're in line.
So leverage funds to support non-HUD funded activities. So the youth task force was not in the planning process for like money to go into the youth task force. So with that being said, like Covenant House and Anchorage Coalition to End Homelessness work together to find other source of funding to make sure that our young people are getting paid for the work that they do, because it's not easy to be vulnerable or to share our stories. You're gonna hear probably some of our young people telling or sharing their stories if they're comfortable later on today, but that's something that in a way it demoralizes a young person itself, but it's also empowering and inspiring. So with leveraging funds, like a lot of the dollars itself from YCP was not enough, like Carletta said earlier. So they had to look outside of YCP and figure out a way to make this sustainable, because we see it as a impact for not only our agency, but for our community itself. So.
And another example of leveraging funds is Rapid Rehousing, for example. Our HUD funding didn't pay necessarily for us to go out and purchase the furniture for young people to move into their apartment. So we were able to get support from private funders that allowed us to furnish all of the units that young people were moving into. And we've talked about this quite a bit, but the solid communication with partners that are involved is essential. So we're going to pass out this presentation. We have a partner report. We're creating partner reports every 6 months so that we can share not only with our partners, but also with our funders, the progress that we're making. And if I don't have enough, we can also email this out. Julia? Mm-hmm.
So on the note of solid communication with all of the partners involved, I think that it's really important to remember something that we've talked about multiple times throughout the past few days, that we all come from different experiences, and that sometimes, excuse the phrasing here, but sometimes we've got... That was really good timing. Strange bedfellows. So, Choosing Our Roots is a queer-centered, queer-facing organization in partnership with two organizations that have some connection to systems of faith. And those aren't always the partnerships that you immediately say, oh, this is going to be really easy, right? This is going to be a partnership that just makes sense. But what we find is that with really good, clear communication between our partnerships, we're able to navigate those bumps, and we're able to come up with something that actually serves the young people. I think that Dash was saying this and saying that members of the youth task force sort of took everybody to task and said, stop your infighting. And I think that that's a lot of what we do, is when we find that we're having a breakdown in communication, we say, whoa, 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 let's come back down to the table and center on who are the people that we're serving, how can we serve them best, and where can we give a little bit and get a little bit, right? So I just want to officially say it on the record, it's really rad to be in community with people who are willing to continue to grow together.
So before we get to some questions, this is just kind of where we're headed next. We're in our second year of the projects. Increasing our landlord liaisons with landlords is a priority for this year. I talked about it a little bit earlier, the integrating system navigators with child welfare, that's happened. And we're seeing great benefits in having permanency navigators work with the Office of Children's Services. One of the things that does happen with the HUD demonstration project is there is an evaluation. WestStat is the organization that we're working with, and they are about to, for us to plan their second site visit. Their first site visit it was really easy. It was they were getting to know us. They did an initial assessment. It actually has been a very positive and experience. So looking forward to continuing to work with them. And really the idea behind the evaluation is to have an external organization really assess the impact that our projects are having, as HUD is really interested in scaling these projects up. And then of course to continue to increase the capacity for our youth task force and to continue to support the work that they're doing. All right, any questions? We have enough time for questions.
Big enough program, how many youth are in the queue today for various services?
So one of the things that this really has allowed us to do in partnership with the coalition, and there is a gap, is to try to get a clear picture of the data. And there's still some uncertainty between what's in HMIS and what's not, but the gap that we've identified is about 120 youth.
Youth services is the goal to end homelessness while they're still youth. We talk about like how youth who transition into now are adults, and how services, how we catch them, or how we make sure that they don't fall out, or
It's to end the experience while they're still youth, so that they don't transition into adult services. I mean, I think the only thing that we've been talking about is permanent supportive housing, because a young person can go under permanent supportive housing and then at 24, 25 transition to adult. But there's also the chance that they may transition into independence and not need to make that transition.
I'm just going to put this question out there for the group because okay. Anyway, I was just talking to Allison about this, but so we at Catholic Social Services are having a big new focus on families, right? And the interventions that are specifically tailored for families, and the family we're defining here is a household that has a minor in the household, right, with adults. But what about youth who are in a handling there and thinking about like the specialized intervention for them, where do they apply? And I think our data isn't clean there. I think just one look demonstrated to us that it's not clean. So I'm just curious about, just to put that out there to everyone, and if you're starting to look at this at a statewide level, first of all, the data isn't very clean between the distinction between families in HMIS, youth in HMIS, adults in HMIS. It's not real clear. There's overlaps. And what are the interventions like? Are there special youth family interventions, or is it family interventions and youth interventions wrapped around? And how are we going to address that?
So what I would say, there's just two things I would say. That one is that's a question that we ask. And so our permanency navigators, for example, our staff actually attend all 3 of the meetings because there's such overlap, even though they're youth, but the majority of them are over the age of 18, and we are seeing this gap between 18 to 24, and that's why our staff participate in all 3 of the subpopulations versus just the youth population. And I do think that this is just an ongoing conversation and something that we need to be intentional about as we go ahead. I think Julia wanted to.
Yeah, I want to lift up what Carletta's saying about the necessity of that permanency navigator and bridging some of those gaps, because sometimes we get sort of a myopic or narrow-minded view of who we're talking about when we're talking about particular populations. For example, of the young people that are part of my caseload, multiple young people that are on my caseload have experienced some form of pregnancy or parenting. And people don't always think like queer youth are parents, but sometimes queer youth are parents, right? And those permanency navigators' ability to move in and out of different communities of care and talk about those intersecting identities means that we can do our work collaboratively better. I do think that there is a lot of room for more specialized intervention across the board. But what that looks like, I don't know.
Any other questions? The one thing I would just add about I'm losing my voice all of a sudden, sorry, about the permanency navigators is it also has been a great opportunity for us to hire staff who have lived experience. And so our permanency navigators, right now we have 5. Of those 5, 2 have lived experience. One of our rapid rehousing case managers has lived experience. 3. Oh, 3 of our permanency navigators have lived experience, and one of our rapid rehousing case managers have lived experience. And I do think it's added a great value to the program as well.
Sorry, so funny story, 2 of them were actually in Covenant House. So if you think about that, like I think that's a good cycle to where they were once a homeless youth, a young person that was helped by Covenant House, and for them to come back and work for Covenant House, regardless of salary, regardless of like their pay, we all know you all don't get paid enough to do this work. But it's because we are very passionate of it, and we know it helps our community and just this world in general, that we do the work that we do. So yeah, just to give you guys like an idea, that is a great impact for someone to be in services during their teen years and to come back and work for that same agency. That's a good thing to me. So.
Any other questions? Thank you so much.